crisis averted is not really a typical story during the Trump era. Crisis walked headlong into, seems to be. However, another government shutdown was averted this week. And Donald Trump did not get funding for the wall. He got some funding for the wall, but not nearly as much. And we'll talk more about that. Also, there was a role for labor in this dispute, which I think has been underplayed dramatically. Democrats were looking to cap the number of beds that ICE can basically set up to detain people. They did not get that hard cap. They did, however, supposedly work out some type of formula, which they think will diminish the number of beds that ICE maintains. We shall see. But largely crisis averted. I guess, time to move on to another one. But how do you think this played out? Donald Trump seems to have lost and done so with quite a whimper.
Well, he certainly did. I mean, this last shutdown. I mean, apparently what happened is that the Republicans finally reached their limit on shutdowns. I mean, there have been 5, I believe, since Trump took office. For 2 years, there have been five shutdowns. Most of them were pretty insignificant. This last one, of course, was absolutely horrific and was the longest in history and really did cause a tremendous amount of suffering and even impacted the overall economy. And, they finally seem to have gone, okay, we can't do this again. And so, they went through the process that would normally be the process of the appropriators coming up with some kind of an agreement. That's normally how government is run in this country. And, Trump really was left without any choice but to sign it. And when you look, and apparently, this was in the cards, I think, from the very beginning. When you look at this, when you think back to the first year when he was offered $25 billion for the wall in exchange for, path to citizenship for safety and path to citizenship for the DACA recipients and a number of other sort of big-ticket items on the Democratic side, which would have been a big immigration deal, he made the deal and then walked away from it because Stephen Miller and other hardline immigration people came back after the deal had been struck with a bunch of poison pills, especially about legal immigration, which is basically, that's fundamental to this administration's immigration policy. So they walked away from that deal, and then subsequently they walked away from deal after deal after deal until it has now been diminished to the point where he got $1 billion to fix some fences, a little over $1 billion to fix some fences on the border. That's basically what he ended up getting out of this. So, the great art of the deal negotiator turns out to be perhaps the worst negotiator in American history, which is not surprising to you and me, but it is, still goes a little against his brand. That's not stopping him, however, from declaring victory and say it all went, it's great. They're already building the wall. Now they just need to finish the wall. And his new approach is just going to be saying, well, you can believe me or you can believe your lying eyes. The wall is there. It is, you think it's invisible, but it's actually there because that's all he's left with.
They literally, at his El Paso rally, they literally had signs that said, finish the wall. There was no longer build the wall. It was signs that said finish the wall as if it was ongoing or they were building it or they had half built it. And to a certain extent, I mean, and we could talk about whether we think this is going to work. I sort of think it might. And frankly, there's a whole host of things that I feel like maybe this could solve in terms of problems. How about the temporary protection status for refugees from places like Haiti and African countries there where you have folks who are here because there were civil wars or there was a natural disaster? How about just Donald Trump, printing up signs saying we sent them all back? And right. Just like we can go full on into he just pretends that he's done all these things. I would have rather they pretended about doing the tax cuts I mean, this maybe we've come up on a possible solution to bring the country together.
Well, it works for me much better than if he actually accomplishes these things, right? So if this is what we need to do, it's an emperor has no clothes kind of riff, right? I mean, we just sort of pretend like he's successful and everybody kind of nods their head and go, okay, good for you. Now, I don't know how that plays out electorally because I do have some concerns that some of this is working for him even beyond just his hardcore base, because, one of the big mystique about Donald Trump was that he can win against all odds. So if he can persuade, I don't know, I don't want to call them low information voters, but just, people who are sitting around going, hey, the economy's pretty good, I'm floating, Trump's a weirdo, but hey, he really is he's able to win even when it looks like he can't. You got to admire that. The guy's a real, he's got grit and
right.
He can get her done. So it is a little concerning just because I've kind of lost faith in the American people's ability to sort of separate fact from fiction. So, I don't know, but it certainly is better than actually doing these things. So, I'll take what I can get. And as far as the border wall is concerned, look, it was a horrible process from the very beginning that brought us to this place. It's ridiculous. And, I'm not going to blame Trump for that. He ran on that issue. He was trying to fulfill a campaign promise that he made, and it was the Republicans in Congress who made this happen. They are the ones who are responsible for this 100% because they knew from the beginning that this was a ridiculous idea, that it was never going to happen, and yet they just cannot summon even the tiniest bit of courage to face this guy down and tell him what's what and explain to him. Mitch McConnell could have brought that to a vote at any time. They could have sent it to the president and let him veto it. And Mitch McConnell could have undoubtedly, if any of these Republicans had even the slightest guts, they could have overridden the veto. And, that's all they had to do. And they know that the wall was a ridiculous concept from the beginning. So, I blame them more than Trump. I mean, he's just doing what he does. But the rest of these people, they didn't have to shut down the government. Mitch McConnell seems to think it was a lesson. We had to teach Trump a lesson. Yeah, well, it was a pretty expensive lesson.
Right. And Donald Trump didn't learn anything. Let's be honest. It just meant more executive time for him. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we got more to talk about this and other things going on in the news. It's been another crazy week. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.